Hey there, thanks for checking in. Today I got a little project. I've been waiting to do it for a while. Had to wait till I figured out what exact equipment and whatnot I was going to be using before I built this. So I'm going to build a timer board, Wi-Fi timer board with temperature control for a seedling tent, doing garden starts, that kind of stuff. I could use it for anything horticultural indoors. So components are basic. I have a Wi-Fi switch. You've seen those before. You've seen my wiring on those before. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. This one is relatively new. I haven't done one on this yet. It is an STC-3008 thermostat control, temperature control. It does heating and cooling separately. It has dual probes on it, so one for your heating and one for your cooling. I believe you can also tweak it inside. I know the other ones you can. The step down from this, which is a single probe, but you can adjust it inside to do heating or cooling. Not both, but one or the other. So this one, it'll be able to control a fan if things get too hot, and it'll be able to control a heater if things get too cold. If you're doing seedlings and clones and stuff like that, or you have a direct vent to the exterior of your home and it's winter time, it can drop considerably cold at night. So, and nature doesn't like a vacuum, so that cold air is definitely going to come inside. Unless you have a backdraft dampener on it or something, you're going to get cold air in that area. And if you're not in a flowering kind of a stage, that's not really that great. If you're in a flowering stage, that's awesome because it'll tighten everything up. The cold makes everything rock hard, right? So yeah, if you are in a flowering kind of a stage, you definitely can let your temperature drop down, so you wouldn't need the heating aspect of this. The cooling feature, yeah, you can almost always make use of for most applications. These things are great. They're used in everything. They're used in distillation of water or essential oils. They're used in computers. Not specifically this model, but probably more the STC 3000, which does heating or cooling, one or the other, not both, like I said. But for this one, you could use that for computers and whatnot, because you're only cooling it. You don't really want to heat up your gaming computer. So, but these ones do both. Like I said, this has two probes. These ones have a single probe. The probe must be attached. You cannot use it without it. You also have to be careful if you want to add a different type of probe to this, because you need to know exactly which probe you're dealing with. I picked up some of these. They're to go through bulkheads and whatnot for reservoirs and pots and pans and stuff like that, high temp applications. They're simple 2-wire. They're the type K, same as these ones, but when I tried to plug it in, it just beeps incessantly. So yeah, be careful with that. You're probably better off to go with something like this, where it's just actually the shell and then no guts inside of it, and then you just put your own probe into it and tighten it up and whatnot. So there is no actual exchange of air. There's no way for air or water or liquids, whatever, to get through to the electrical side. It's really sealed up. A couple of silicone washers if you're in a high temp application, and you're good to go. As you can see with this one, it requires a little bit of wiring and knowing where to put the jumpers. This one is very simple because it's only a single outlet on it. It either does heating or cooling. This one gets a little bit more complex because you do heating and cooling at any given time. So you need to add a couple more jumpers and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Okay, so that's basically the lowdown on the STC 3008 and the STC 3000. I will be doing a tutorial on this. Got it 3/4 started. Just on how to program it. Wiring it's relatively simple. It's almost idiot proof. But the programming seems to be a problem for most people, and surprisingly there's not a lot of information online about it. So yeah, I've got one of those in the works for that. This one is extremely simple. It has a lot of the same features that this one does. They both control heat or cooling. They both 120 or 220. They both have the probes on the back, screw-in connectors on them and whatnot. I haven't got into it on this one, but this one has a lot of programmable features on the inside, so you can have an alarm come on if it's too hot or too cold, wherever your set point is. You can actually adjust the time that between when it'll trigger. So if the fan cuts off, you can set it to come back on instantly as soon as the temperature drops 1 degree, or you can set it so that it won't come back on for however many minutes or seconds you want to set it for. So there's a delay, so you don't constantly have your fan kicking on, shutting off, kicking on, shutting off, kicking on, shutting off over like 1 degree increments or whatever. So that's really handy. I'm going to show you a couple of tricks, at least one for these receptacles. I'm going to take this receptacle and make 1/2 of it for heating and 1/2 of it for cooling. So I'm not using a whole outlet for the cooling fan and another whole outlet for the heating on it. And it's really simple, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So we'll be back in a second and get all the tools and stuff ready, and we'll see you then. Alright, so we're back. As promised, we're going to show you how to wire up the STC3008 temp controller. It is, like I said, it's 120 or 220. It's smart, it'll figure it out for itself. You have 2 ports here, which are for your power in. You have 2 ports here for your probes, and you have 4 over here, which is out to the load. So basically you need to jump over to 2 ports over here, and then the remaining 2 wires will go out to your fan and your heater, or whatever you're using it for. It's relatively easy to wire up. I mean, it's not hard at all. There are a couple tricks I'll show you here, make your life a little easier. The ports are small, so if you're trying to get multiple wires into them of a decent gauge, one that I would feel comfortable using in this application, you're gonna find it difficult, even if you solder them together and squish them and all that kind of fun MacGyver kind of stuff. But don't worry, I got you covered. This one's really easy, actually. So basically you need to get a hold of some of these. They come in the kit to get them just about anywhere, any big box store, automotive store, that kind of thing. They're the half-size spade connectors. They go into, well, basically they would go into a shrunken down version of that. So these ones they're the half size. You don't use them very often, and there's not too many people who use them all the time, but for this application it works just dandy. So first things first, get your wires, kind of twist them together. Make sure you got enough wire there to actually twist, but not so much as you're going to drive it out the other end. And once you get that in place, make sure you got it in there all the way to the end. I do. Give it a crimp, and now when you slide it into the position here, if you backed it off enough, you have a very secure wire connection, so you won't get any arcing or anything like that. And you'll do the same thing all the way along. So get another short piece or 2, twist them together very well, and then turning, you slide it right into there, and that is how that should look. You see it's just coming out at the end there. And as always, with the crimper in the right spot, and again, you're good to go. The nice thing about these ones is they're insulated up here, so you don't have to worry about adding heat shrink. You can if you want, and depending on where it's actually sitting, sometimes I will if I don't think it's going to be protected enough by itself. So couldn't possibly be that I just enjoy using heat shrink, right? Alright, so once you've got that into there, then we will run it over. Okay, so we'll do basically the same thing for the next one here. Trim it down so it's not going to push out the other end. And again, this one's going to be a little more tricky because it's in place already, which always makes it a bit tougher, but we can do it. We have the technology. And if all else fails, get a bigger hammer, right? Alright, so now we've got that in position. Give it a decent crimp. And then that one will go over into the next spot. Now the last one, you have a choice. You can either use it with a spade connector on the end of it, or you can use it without the spade connector. It's totally up to you. You don't need it, but it does make it look nice and neat and tidy. So if you notice, I am using the first port on each one, and that's because that's where the internal relays kick it over and complete the circuit, sending power out to the load. So if you had it into the opposite one, probably still work, but I don't think that's the way you're supposed to run it, so I wouldn't suggest it. If you're brave or stupid or have money to burn and want to give it a shot and let me know how it turned out for you, fly at her. Other than that, don't hurt yourself. Okay, so this is the last one here, and once we get this into position and backed off, it wants to cooperate. You might have to play with it a little bit. Sometimes the screwdriver doesn't seat properly into the screws for it, so it just kind of spins and spins and spins, and you wonder why nothing's happening. Especially if you're using the wrong one there. Alright, here we go. Third time's a charm. Alright, so that is how that is supposed to look. So your power in, then the other side will be for your common. And for this one, I have chosen to use a blue for the cooling side and a yellow for the hot side. These ones, connections here, you don't really need to worry about putting a spade connector on it. That's only when you're trying to join multiple wires into the same slot. But if you're just adding the wire into it like I'm doing right now, it'll hold just fine by itself without having the spade connectors. Spade connectors are just for getting the multiple wires in there. Well, my version of getting the multiple wires in there. I'm sure other people have other versions. Alright, so here's the last one. And pop this into position. Make sure when you seat it in, you don't have any stray wires floating around. The ports are awfully close together, and it wouldn't take much to have a wire slip over and whatchamacallit, short things out. So there you go. We have the yellow and the blue, so cooling and the heating, power in, and at some point I will be adding the common wire. There's no time like the present. Tighten them down nice and snug, but don't go overboard and strip them or break them off the board. That's worse yet. So there you go. That is pretty much how it should look to my mind. And then these will be sort of bent down, and if everything works correctly like it is supposed to, then this piece right here should fit on like that, and your wires are further protected and they go down behind the board. So I'm going to leave that off for the time being, but yeah, that is the animal right there. And next we will go on to the receptacles, so don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Alright, so as promised, the receptacles. That is where you will obviously plug in your fan, heater, and lights. For this application, because it's only a single plug-in, it'll only be LED lights, but you can get a lot of LED lights on a normal setup here like this. So like I said, I'm going to show you a little trick. You have your brass side and you have your silver side. Your silver side is usually for your common, and your brass side is usually almost always for your load, or sorry, your power, your hot wire. Now, if you've ever looked up close at these, which most people haven't, there's a little tiny clip right in between the two screws. So there's a little piece that juts out. And if you take that little tiny clip and give it a bit of a wiggle and a pry, should eventually do something, right? Might have to do it this way. There. So as you can see, I took off that little tiny clip. It's not much to it. And it is now gone. That side still has it, this side doesn't. Okay, we can leave the common side alone. We can leave the silver side alone because it's shared through the entire board. But the idea was to separate these two. So when you remove that clip, you break the connection in between these two, and now they're independent of each other. So from now on, you can take your cooling setup on this one, and you can put your heating setup on your heating one on here. And now you have one that is set up to heat and one that is set up to, or one is set up to cool, one is set up to heat, running from here and off the probes, and they're completely independent of each other. So there's going to be no conflict there. Your cooling won't be on when your heat is on, and your heat it won't be on when your cooling's on, unless you have set it up and programmed it to do just that. It's possible. All sorts of Tim Allen types out there who like to rewire things. Anyway, so that's the receptacle part. From then on, it is basic wiring up. You'll take your common and hook it into one side here, like I said, as long as you only remove that little clip from the hot side, then you only need to put one wire on here. If you goofed and you took the clip off of both sides, then you need to add a common to both of them. So don't goof. And then you can run the common wire over to the other side as well, or if you want to do it that way, just run it over to the other side while it's in place. And then your LED controller, the Wi-Fi controller, will run the hot side of this one. So you'll have room for two outlets for string or series of LEDs, one for a fan and one for a heater or reservoir heater or whatever you need to use it for. So yeah, that's that, and come back in a second here and finish it up. Be right back. Alright, so we've got this all kind of done now and hooked up. Do one final test before you plug it in so you don't short anything out. So check continuity on your multimeter on the common probe or the live whatever, and then just test those points on here and the other points, and it should beep only when it's on a common side and not when it's on a live side or a ground. So here's a common 2, common over here, nothing on the ground, nothing on the live, nothing on the live, nothing on the live, nothing on the live, nothing else, just those ones. Alright, so we should be good to go. Always handy to check it out before you plug it in, see the sparks fly and whatnot, shut your TV off, etc. Alright, so put this together and be right back. Alright, now we'll just do a quick rundown of what's going on inside here. Figure if you've gotten this far, you're adept at this sort of thing, and I don't really need to go too much into it. If I'm wrong, leave me a comment or something and I'll go over it a little more. power in comes to the side of the rectangular box. It is over to here where it is split off, so the common on one and the live wire, the black wire, on the other. From there they come in through the back and feed the Wi-Fi switch and the therm control. From there the therm control breaks off, comes back in through the back, the yellow and the blue wire, which is your heating and your cooling, and they come to this receptacle here, which we have taken the post off of, that clip, which means they're independent. So the heat is on one side and the cooling is on the other. The common is shared because we left that clip in place on the common side, so you'll need one wire to feed both of these for the common. The common then comes over to the receptacle on this side, which is the same. The clip is left in place and it has the common for both of these. The feed wire for the common comes in this, I used a black wire for this situation, and it just comes to here. So this feeds both of those on the common. The Wi-Fi switch again is fed through these ones. It comes in through the top, back in around through, and then it feeds to one post on this receptacle. Because we left the clip in place there, they are unison, they're together. So if we had removed that clip, they'd be independent, but because we left that in there, both of these receptacles are fed by that one wire. That is about it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the section below, in the comment section. I'd love to hear your experiences, your feedback, questions, all that kind of stuff. And that's it for this project. Thanks for watching, thanks for checking out my channel and the support, and be safe out there. Take her easy.